Back in 2015, the Warriors took the NBA by storm. Now, a lot of people remember those Warriors teams for Steph winning back-to-back MVPs and Kevin Durant showing up and ruining the league, but at the beginning, they were really kind of the darlings of the NBA. They had two of the greatest shooters of all time in their prime, a whole cast of lovable role players, and they played a style of basketball that was beautiful to watch. I really loved those teams, and then KD showed up and kind of ruined it all. They were more of an ISO-heavy team once he got there, which was fine because they had the ultimate cheat code and one of the best scorers in NBA history. They had to give him the ball and go isolation at times, but it kind of ruined that movement that really made them so popular in the first place. And then he gets hurt, the Warriors get old, they get injured, and they just never returned to that style since he left. But this postseason, it kind of looks like the old Warriors are back. The movement, the youth, the crazy runs, the death lineup, they look terrifying. And really a lot of this starts with Jordan Poole, who before this season was not a very consequential NBA player. He was someone that we knew of, someone that we were aware of that had some interesting scoring performances, but there was really no indication that he was going to become a starting level guard, certainly not on a team as good as Golden State. And in the playoffs this year, he has been unbelievable. He's had a fantastic season. I think he should have been in place of Ja as a finalist for the Most Improved Player award simply because of the qualifications of that award. I don't really think Ja qualifies for what that award is supposed to be about. And his improvement has as much to do with this resurgence of this Warriors group as really anything else. Now, obviously, health plays a huge part in this, and we're going to talk about that throughout the video, but Poole's ability to really be mini Steph. I mean, they say that about him, and of course, he's not the same level of shooter, certainly not from extreme distances, and he's never going to be a back-to-back MVP the way that Steph was. But in terms of his play style, in terms of his unselfishness, in terms of his abilities as a teammate, there's a lot of similarities there, and it's really kind of the result of this system that they've had in place in Golden State over the years of unselfishness, of passing, of moving on and off the ball, and that has really created another huge weapon for this group. Similar to Steph, he can play off the ball, he can run around on screens, he can shoot, he can attack and get to the rim, and alongside Clay, alongside Steph, alongside Wiggins, Draymond, they've really created the death lineup 2.0. And this isn't something that I ever really thought would return, because going back to when it was Harrison Barnes or when it was Kevin Durant, they always needed a ton of spacing, they needed a ton of shooting, and they needed guys that could play on and off the ball. And plugging in another player that is exactly like that in Poole has really elevated them to the point where we're probably underselling them as potential contenders in the Western Conference. And the really interesting aspect of all this that we're seeing at the beginning of this postseason is what it looks like when Steph Curry comes off the bench. This is a little tangent for me here. Conceptually, the best player, the best offensive player coming off the bench actually makes perfect sense, because you don't want your best offensive player on the floor when all your other best players are out there. You want that guy out there, the guy that is most capable of carrying an offense by himself. You want him out there when you have the most bench players out there to really maximize his ability to raise the ceiling of a group. And that is exactly what Steph has been doing in coming off of the bench rather than starting. And we do this throughout the games. Typically, when you go away from the starters and you have more bench players on the floor, you have one or two of your best offensive players on the floor to carry that group. They just don't do that in the beginning part of the game because the best players have to start. But Steph's role in this is very, very interesting, because when he is healthy enough to start again, Jordan Poole is going to have to go to the bench, or Clay is. I don't think it's going to be Clay. I think it's going to be Jordan Poole. Andrew Wiggins is too good defensively. Draymond has to play at the 4 to start games, and then Looney's going to be out there. They can't go to the small ball unit, the death lineup in the beginning of games, because it's going to tire out Draymond. That's their secret weapon in their back pocket throughout the entirety of these games. And so Poole's going to have to go to the bench, and it's going to work in a similar way that Steph is. But interestingly, it's almost how it should be. And so as a part of this is kind of some of the pillars of those old Warriors teams. We have the movement, that's there. We have the youth. We have guys like Kuminga and Moody during the regular season playing key roles. Obviously Jordan Poole, who we've been talking about. And then the third pillar of that is this death lineup, this lineup that allows them to be an incredible offensive team. I mean, some of their numbers from this group in their first 2 games in their series against the Nuggets make absolutely no sense. They would have the best offensive record, or best offensive rating, I should say, in the entire league with this group. Their defensive rating is unbelievable. Draymond has done an incredible job of defending Jokic, and that's really what all of this revolves around, both offensively and defensively for Golden State. If Draymond Green is healthy, that activates this lineup of 5, and it creates a situation that really allows the Warriors to be contenders. It puts them at full strength. They have one of the best roaming defenders in the league in Draymond, and then if you want to put him on the ball in a big, he can do that. And this death lineup doesn't work without him, because the hidden secret of this group, going back to when it was Harrison Barnes or when it was Kevin Durant, is they don't really have a point guard out there in the backcourt. Steph can be an incredible on-ball player. He can be a great off-ball player, but he floats between those roles. Klay is not a full-time on-ball guy. Jordan Poole is not a full-time on-ball guy, and neither is Andrew Wiggins, nor any of the other players in any of the previous versions of this death lineup. Because Draymond is the point guard. He's the guy that runs things. He's the guy that can't space in this current version. He's not an off-ball spacer, but he can screen. He can set other guys up. He can pass incredibly well. He sees the floor really well, especially on these back cuts. And that allows the other team to have to guard the entire floor of the other four guys. You have Wiggins, Poole, Steph, and Klay, all guys that can hurt you offensively, all that can work on or off the ball. And the one guy you're not worried about off the ball has the basketball in his hands, and it's almost impossible to guard with the amount of movement they put on the floor. The way that they have Klay set back screens for Steph, and then they slip that, and they have these back doors, and they have all these different little rules. It's not even sets. They just have all these different things that they're reading, and Draymond is the focal point of all of it. And that leads me to kind of the last point of what could hopefully be the reimagining of this Warriors group as they move into a new era, and that is health. If Draymond is healthy, and Steph is healthy, and Klay is healthy, this team has the opportunity to win a title this year and be one of the best teams in the league over the next couple of seasons, with the exception of Draymond because of the punishment that he takes playing as the small ball five and some of the injury issues that he's had. The other two guys seem to be pretty durable, with the exception of Klay's obviously lower leg injury issues that he's had, but they should age pretty well. Like, these are guys that can really shoot the ball. They can play in a variety of different roles. They can play as role players way on down later in their careers if you need them to. And as long as those three guys are good to go and they're healthy, this is going to be an incredible group to watch moving forward. Now, here's the problem though, and this was a problem going back to the pre-KD version of Golden State, is in these kinds of games against Denver, a Denver team that is just overmatched. They don't have the bodies defensively to guard anybody on Golden State, much less when they have all of the Wiggins, Poole, Klay, and Steph out there. When it's not working, when they're not getting out in transition, when they're not using a ton of movement stuff, and the other team is switching everything defensively and able to hold up, they do tend to struggle a little bit. And I think that's something that we're going to see as this postseason progresses, if Golden State continues to progress through it, is them needing to find another option in isolation, whether that be Steph or ball screen stuff with Steph and Draymond. And so it's not perfect, nor were those pre-KD Warriors. I'm not trying to make them seem like they were. There are still going to be issues here. Health is going to be a problem. Defensively, it's going to be a problem at certain points. Having Kevon Looney have to play as much as he does is going to be a problem against certain units and against certain mismatches. But the thing is, if there was one team in the Western Conference that was going to cause them a lot of issues defensively at the 5 spot, which is where they're weakest, it would be Denver. And Jokic has not had his way in this series to this point as the recording of this video. And I don't anticipate that changing with how well Draymond has guarded him. And so you look at a team like Utah potentially that they could face. You think about Rudy Gobert's size being a problem for them. Probably not, given the fact that they're going to be able to just absolutely destroy him on the other end of the floor. Phoenix could be a problem because of Ayton's mobility, but he's not necessarily a guy that's going to punish you a ton in the post. I think Phoenix will try, but Draymond and Looney should be able to do a pretty good job against them as well. And when you look at the landscape of the Western Conference, this sizes up pretty well for them. And it's just incredible to think about the journey that Golden State took to get here with, the pre-KD stuff. Then KD gets there, then he gets hurt and he leaves, and they go through this down period for them where they really have to try and find themselves again, and they really start to try and develop some of these role player guys. And Jordan Poole comes out of that, and they've got Kuminga, they've got Moody. We still don't know what's going to happen with Wiseman. They're doing all this despite the fact they're getting nothing out of the second overall pick in the draft from 2 years ago. And I'm just enjoying so much the fact that this group is back to what they used to be. I enjoyed the pre-KD Warriors way more than I enjoyed the KD version, not because KD was ruining the league, not because they were so much better than everybody else, but because they were better than everybody else playing a style that was pretty much the opposite of what they did prior to KD getting there. They don't have that crutch anymore where they can just give KD the ball and isolate and say, save us. They have to do their movement stuff. They have to play in transition. They have to share the ball. And that's such a more fun version of this team. They are flawed. They do have issues defensively. They don't have an incredible isolation score every single time down the floor. But those flaws make them more lovable. It brings us back to that feeling we had when they first kind of broke onto the scene in 2015 and they won a title and really created a a feeling that I hadn't really had a ton watching basketball, where you were just so excited to watch them every time down the floor, not because of their athleticism, not because they were going to dunk the ball, not because they were going to do anything crazy and break everybody's ankles, but because it was a group and it was a team that was playing so well together. And so the bottom line is, a path exists for this group to go on and win the NBA title this season and continue to be contenders over the next couple of seasons. I don't know if it's going to happen for them this year, but seeing them back at this level, seeing them with the death lineup and Draymond at the 5, and seeing what Wiggins has become for them, pretty much exactly what they needed from a two-way player perspective, someone that they really can't sub out. You might think initially, well, they'll have the 3 guards start and they'll put Wiggins on the bench. He has to be out there for them defensively. He's just kind of a wild card for them offensively, but he gives them size. He is that Harrison Barnes spot for them in that initial death lineup. And so there really is a path here. Phoenix is going to be tough for them. There are some other matchups potentially that could be tough later on in the Western Conference playoffs, or potentially a team from the East if they do make it to the finals. But they're about as big of a threat in my mind, playing the way that they are right now, as any other team in the league. And maybe it's just because they're playing Denver, who's overmatched. But I really, if I was one of these teams in the Western Conference, I would be very, very afraid that we could be looking at another couple of years of Warriors dominance here for the next couple of seasons.